Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our work session for Monday, December 21st, 2020. This meeting is being held electronically in accordance with the provisions of the Iowa Public Information Board due to the unspread of the coronavirus. And with that, I can start us off. Calling us to order, we are looking to discuss some proposed ordinance changes for the administrator duty responsibilities. The preface is just a discussion. There's no final binding decisions tonight, but we are looking to gain a consensus and just get a better understanding of what the council's wishes are going forward in continuing with the drafted ordinance. So with that, I'll turn it over to our city attorney, Kevin Rogers. So go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Mayor, Council. As you recall, you initiated a review of certain ordinances, code of ordinances that deal with mayoral duties and city administrator duties. I'm getting background on my ear. Do I sound okay?
We hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. Basically, what the changes do are they clarify, in some cases this information was already there, but clarify the mayor as the chief executive officer, city administrator as chief administrative officer, eliminate duplication, eliminate some inconsistency to make sure those duties are clearly identified. As part of this process, of course, the duties that the Code of Iowa requires remain with the office of mayor, were retained with the office of mayor. The other duties that are more administrative in nature were shifted to the city administrator position, although not very many were shifted away. There's more clarification there. Things that were purely administrative, like cemetery permits and some nuisance things, were moved from the mayor position as well. And there's some clarification language. Every time I get into these ordinances, if I see something, I'll go ahead and try to clarify it so it makes more sense to everyone. At the same time, while we were looking at the administrative duties of the city administrator, we also looked at the other positions in the organizational chart, and starting with, of course, the department directors and managers, and basically looked at those in terms of appointment and removal. One aspect of that we looked at was the idea of city officers, and certain offices are city offices, such as appointments to boards and commissions. They're for a term of years. Some functions of the city are delegated there. But in terms of personnel, some of our ordinance provisions were not real clear on who are city officers, what positions are city offices. Several were identified already, such as city attorney and city administrator, city clerk, a few others, but some were not very clear. And so some of the trappings of offices are taking an oath, for instance, posting a bond. While some were sort of identified as offices, they weren't required to take an oath or post a bond. So it was decided that while we're at this, we might as well clarify the positions that are city offices. And the demarcation line chosen was those offices that are specifically called out in the Code of Iowa were identified as city offices, and the ones that were not. As I said before, many of these positions were identified as city offices, so those were retained as well. So basically, there are several offices specifically identified as such, and along with department directors were identified as city offices specifically, although again, some of those were already designated as such. With that then, appointment authority was looked at, and generally in the law, the appointing authority also has removal authority, so we lined those up as well. Some of those remained the same, but some of those were changed. For instance, department directors, those in the current Code of Ordinances are appointed by the council upon recommendations. That would change to the city administrator under these proposed changes. The only other change I would say had to do with identifying the standard for removal of these offices that weren't heretofore identified. And so that was clarified as well. I think a lot of that was conforming with current practice, even though it wasn't in the Code of Ordinances. Mayor Green has had an opportunity to review these, agrees with these proposed changes. I would say that there's going to be a separate discussion about part-time, full-time mayor and salary. That's a separate consideration for you all. I'll bet there's going to be some discussion about that, but the ordinance changes, putting duties in one column or the other, we'd recommend be undertaken anyway for clarification purposes, regardless of what council decides to do with the part-time, full-time situation. And I would say as well that the Code of Iowa gives council the authority to designate its offices, the terms, and the duties. And so in the ordinances, the ordinance amendments that are proposed, it's sort of the council appoints the city administrator upon recommendation of the mayor. City administrator appoints the 4 department directors, and the 4 department directors appoint folks in their respective departments, sort of a classic pyramid organizational chart to make it clear who the appointing authority is and therefore who the removal authority is. And so I think that's kind of a general overview. Happy to take questions. There's a lot of stuff here, but what I told you kind of boils it down. And I'd be happy to answer specific questions about language chosen or how something works. As I said, there's a lot here, but if you look at the packet, there's a page number lower right. There's a page number that's not in a box, and there's a page number in a box. So if somebody has a question, if you could refer to the page number in the box, I think everybody can follow along that way. Thank you.
You, Attorney Rogers. So as we move into this, of course, I'm personally vested in it, and as a presiding officer, typically the charge is for the presiding officer not to really enter the discussions. I want to leave this the majority of this time up to the council to just, talk on your own. Would love for you to, if you have questions for me, I'd love to entertain those or help out with that information. And again, the goal isn't to necessarily come up with a final idea tonight, but just to give you and the public who's watching the opportunity to know more about what these changes entail. Now, with that said, just to get out information for me out of the way, I did write up a statement. It's about 3 minutes long. So I'd like to go through that if council doesn't object. And then I'm basically going to just turn it over to you for discussion. So my little prepared statement is, in the coming weeks, the council will have the opportunity to correct significant discrepancies in the city code, which stem from the creation of the administrator position in 2015. The proposed amendments will ensure that the mayor is focused on vital executive duties rather than on routine administrative tasks. The changes also eliminate improper duplication of duties, clarify lines of authority, and specify how several of the mayor's vital executive powers which aren't expressly defined in code right now, should be defined. With these changes, the ordinances will reflect actual practice, set clear expectations, and minimize the risk of confusion and misunderstanding about the distinct roles of the mayor and administrator. As an example of an unnecessary administrative task, for years the mayor has been signing the approval sheets for residents to purchase a city cemetery plot. Why? What political value does the mayor add? Is there a conceivable instance where the mayor wouldn't approve the sale of a cemetery plot? As it turns out, by state law, either the city clerk or the mayor can sign them. So I turned those over to the clerk last month. Now, if anyone complains about cemetery plot purchases, then yes, I'll review it in my role as the city ombudsman. Otherwise, it's just not something I need to have on my plate day to day. And these kinds of administrative tasks just aren't the best use of a CEO's time. As another example, the proposed ordinances would make it so that snow emergencies are declared by the city administrator, not the mayor. And that's fine by me. General guidance should exist for the declaration of a snow emergency. And if that criteria is met, the city administrator should be able to make that call. It's not a political decision. Now, I will say that as the city's CEO, I believe I have the authority to order the administrator to declare a snow emergency, whether or not the criteria has been met. But again, this shouldn't be a political decision. So I'm not sure when a mayor would ever need to do that. I'll note also that the existing ordinances improperly give both the administrator and mayor some of the same responsibilities. For instance, the existing code states that the city administrator shall prepare and submit the annual budget and capital improvements program, but it also assigns the mayor that duty. In recent memory, the mayor hasn't directly prepared the budget. That's what the professional staff is for. Instead, the mayor has provided critical oversight for the entire process. So that's what should be reflected in the city code. And the proposed amendment does that. Also, the existing code states that I directly supervise the departments. But then the code also states that the administrator directly supervises the departments. We can't both directly supervise the departments. That's a recipe for a dysfunctional organization. And that's why I propose changing the ordinances so that I directly supervise the administrator and the administrator directly supervises the departments. Again, going back to what Kevin said of a pyramid type of arrangement. So in closing, as we discuss proposed amendments to the mayor and administrator code, let me be perfectly clear. I would strongly oppose any effort to take away the mayor's executive powers by reassigning them to the city administrator. And that means executive powers. The city's legislative and executive authorities must ultimately remain in the hands of the elected officials, not appointed officials or city employees. These amendments simply provide the proper distinction between the chief executive officer and the chief administrative officer, while preserving and asserting the mayor's executive powers. I believe it's past time to make these corrections, and I ask the council to come to a consensus tonight by continuing to move forward with these necessary changes. Thank you. So with that, I will turn it over for open council discussion and certainly questions that you have for the staff or for me. So who'd like to start us off tonight? We have, in our time budget, we have till about 5:40. We can go a little bit longer, but I also want to reserve time for that second part of our agenda tonight. So please, who'd like to start? And actually, this is work session, so we'll keep it fairly free. Just feel free to chime in. You don't need me to call on you.
I've got a couple questions. Well, I think a lot of the clarifications are good, and as well some of the changes to the duties work for me. But I have a few issues, and the big ones are taking out council approval on the director appointments. That still, I still don't like that because it feels like an indirect accountability to the people. So I understand the pyramid function, but I don't know. I still want it to be more accountable to the people. And also, what is the definition of just cause? Who determines just cause in a legal sense? So that's a Kevin thing. Those were my two biggest issues with reading through it to start off.
Second that on the director's side of it. I'm curious what the reasoning was for, or if there's another layer of that where the council does approve that, or how that worked.
Go ahead, Mr. Rogers, especially for just cause to start out with.
Yeah, sure. I'll address the just cause. Obviously, I'll go to the the director just briefly, obviously, it's perfectly lawful for council to appoint director because you're doing it right now. This change, and you can follow with the mayor on this, was more of a direct accountability thing because I believe it was felt that the city administrator would have direct supervisory function. And so that person would be in the best position to recruit, appoint, and work with that person. And therefore, as appointing authority, would be in the best position to figure out if that person needed to be removed. Because the law presumes the appointing authority also has removal authority. Mayor can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that was the policy idea behind it. In terms of just cause, it is any reasonable basis for removal. It is a higher standard than simply, I don't like the color of your shirt that day, you're gone. There has to be some rational reason. For instance, the person is not fulfilling the person's duties. And in that case, then that's just cause for removal. There are a lot of other things. And a lot of times the personnel policies will dictate if one of these people has serious violations of the personnel policies, that would constitute just cause for removal as well.
And in the case of the administrator, who would be the determiner of just cause? Is that the council?
So under the proposed scenario, what would happen is the city administrator would have peremptory authority to remove for cause. That person who's subject to removal would be able to have a hearing, a so-called name clearing hearing, to challenge that removal. So initially, the decision would be the city administrators. The accountability there is if the mayor isn't happy with how the city administrator handles those types of disciplinary matters, then the city administrator would answer to the mayor and ultimately city council.
Right. And
how does that apply?
Go ahead,
Mayor.
I was just going to clarify. In proposing this, it was just a sense that we are keeping the administrator on tabs for each of these decisions. And if we have a problem with a director, we should be addressing that with the administrator. If the administrator isn't taking action on it, then that would be just cause for a removal of the administrator. If they're not acting in accordance with the council's wishes, we believe that he's not holding his directors accountable properly. So as a mayor, I'm more concerned that the job is being done properly and less about the people who are doing the job. If the job's not being done properly, then you deal with the people. But I'm just concerned about adding in a political motive to what fundamentally are administrative positions. And by law, we have to do a different process for the police chief and the fire chief. So that is just as it was with the recent police chief appointment that I recommend to council, and then the council appoints. So that's one aspect of this. If the council decides that you don't want to go in that direction, we can easily carve that off and have that not be part of this. So they're not going to, the rest of it isn't contingent on this being approved. But just as a matter of practical governance, this seemed to be a smart approach to move forward with.
If I could add on to the mayor's comments, he mentioned police chief, fire chief. That's dictated by Code of Iowa as a city clerk position. Those are kind of the three big exceptions.
In terms of the just cause stuff, how does that relate to the city administrator? Because I believe that verbiage was changed there as well. Same type of thing?
That would be another change. Right now, I think it's specifically stated without cause by a majority of council. That was changed to, I think it was changed to just cause as well. And again, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the thinking there was everyone that the city administrator basically is supervising is under a just cause standard. Therefore, the person supervising them should be under the same removal standard. But again, that's another one of council's calls.
Yeah, that's a political decision there too
There-
for council.
There was also a statement under there that said, with just cause and with a recommendation of the mayor. And I mean, I'm all for checks and balances. That's a huge thing, and accountability to the people. But what if you end up in a situation in the future where the council wants to remove the administrator because they don't believe, but the mayor is a buddy of his, and so he doesn't recommend it. So now you're in the situation where, because the mayor, one single person really holds a lot of power in that situation. So,
Well, there's been a concern or questions about the mayor losing executive authority, and I added that in because for one, it puts it more in line with how other removals are done in the city, like for the police chief, fire chief. So it puts it similar to those sorts of processes, and I just feel was a missing component. If the mayor is not willing to go along with the council's will, I think that mayor would not be having good prospects for reelection. So there's a political side to that as well.
Well, can I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
Well, when Kevin talked about there being a pyramid type system here going up, it seems like I couldn't find in here anything that talks about how the mayor is beholden to the council. Did I miss that, or why isn't that in here? Because obviously he is beholden to the council.
I'll try to answer it legally if I can. So the position of mayor and position of council members are elected positions, and so they have their own standards for accountability and removal. Accountability for all elected officials, of course, is with the voters ultimately. Removal standard is quite different. And that is statutory and ordinance as far as if council is unhappy with the mayor's actions, the remedy ultimately is removal. Otherwise, the elected position of mayor is a separate elected entity. And so that's why in the Code of Iowa and the Code of Ordinances, this executive authority is stated as such. The mayor still would remain the chief executive officer. I would say as an aside, however, council remains the ultimate authority in terms of running the departments in the city. That's in the ordinances. So if there's ultimately some policy or issue in the department, that the final decision there would rest with council.
Well, and it seems for that very reason on that page number 9 that you're talking about for just cause, that there's no reason to add the words upon the recommendation of the mayor.
Why would there be no reason for that?
Because it lies with the majority vote of the council as a whole.
So is that different, or should that be different for the police chief and the fire chief then? Should the mayor not be involved in that process either?
Those are directed by state code differently. As Kevin said, I understand police, fire, and city clerk are all directed by state code.
So with that said, I mean, it sounds like there's a question about having that as a part, like basically removing out the mayor's recommendation and allowing it to just be the council itself.
Well, that's what it
consensus
said
to
before.
Right.
I mean, that's what it said before you made the change.
Correct. Or before I proposed the change. So council can decide, we wouldn't have a vote on it, but if there's not a consensus to move forward, if you want to take the mayor or keep the mayor out of that process, we can strike that.
I have a question about that. To Sue's point, so does the mayor have to recommend the removal of because the process for police chief is the public safety director recommends to the administrator, recommends to the mayor, and the mayor recommends to the council, and we approve it. If we were going to remove a police chief, would it be with majority of council with the recommendation of the mayor as well? Is that how that works?
I'll jump in, Mayor. That's a great question. removal currently for officers is under section 2-159. That's on pages 4 to 5. And it's interesting the way that's set up currently, and that is it identifies the mayor and council as the appointing authority for positions appointed by council. So currently that would be police chief, fire chief, city clerk, city administrator. And the procedure is that the council acts, it says all persons appointed to office in the city may be removed for just cause prior to the end of their term of office by the appointing authority. Now I'm going to accept the city administrator because current ordinances specifically don't use that. It says without cause, but let's take the rest of the city officers. And it says there's a whole procedure, and basically it talks about give notice, then the person has an opportunity to respond. Eventually there's a hearing. And so I believe it's been the practice that the mayor would initiate that procedure because it says mayor and council are the appointing authority.
But just to jump in, from a practical standpoint with regard to the fire chief and police chief, so if there was some reason that they had to be under investigation, and remember, they're under Chapter 80F in the Iowa Code, so there would have to be an investigation done on those, and more than likely that's going to be from the public safety director, who's going to recommend that to the mayor and then or to the city administrator, and we would bring that information forward to the mayor and council, just because of the supervisory aspect of that, because the mayor and council aren't going to be doing daily supervision of that police chief or fire chief. The other thing they won't be doing is the evaluations annually. So those are some of the practical how it would actually happen.
Can I talk?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so just a couple thoughts. The just cause thing was already kind of mentioned. I will say that I do not feel comfortable with just cause, and obviously that's, I have great respect for our city staff, but I'm not comfortable with the just cause part of this. I feel like it opens up a whole host of possible legal problems. That's just my feeling on it. Lots of people reached out to me, and I'm sure all other council, the last few days. They did so in a very well thought, respectful way, which was nice. They were all very adamant that they do not want power taken away. And I don't know that taken away is the best. They want the power to remain, the power the mayor has to remain with the mayor as an elected official. And I've gone back and forth on the topics we'll discuss tonight, but I agree with them in that aspect. And then just we touched on the appointing authority and removal. I think that needs to stay with the mayor. And that's it. That's my 2 cents for now.
When you say appointing, you stay with the council? Because you said mayor.
I'm sorry, with the council. I apologize.
Okay.
I want to clarify one thing if I could. I was looking for this and didn't find it before. Here's what the ordinance currently states. It says removal of appointed officers. Definition of appointing authority. I'm looking at 2-159A on page 4 to 5. For purposes of this section, the term appointing authority means the mayor and the city council. A determination, decision, or vote of the appointing authority as described in this section shall mean a determination, decision, or vote made upon the recommendation of the mayor with approval of the city council. That's what the ordinance currently states, and that's what would remain.
I'd like to speak on this.
Really?
This looks to me like to be a power grab. I believe that the city administrator should serve at the pleasure of the mayor. I think the mayor should retain all of his powers. I think we should have a full-time mayor. And I'd like to even go back to the powers that we had even before we had the city administration. When I come from the private business side. When somebody's not performing or not doing as their boss says, that should be a problem. And that in itself should be just cause. I've had talked with a lot of people as well. And the thing that always strikes me is we've been entrusted with the people who voted for us. And for us to give away the powers that were entrusted to us by those who voted, I have a true problem with that. The more power that we keep as a council and we keep as the mayor, as an elected official, that is the most important part of government, because if we end up not liking the job of the mayor or a council person, they get voted off. So that's where we need to leave our power, and that's with the voting citizens. That's all I have to say on that.
And I totally agree, Dave, but I think the clarity of this is necessary. I mean, we've operated in this fashion on a day-to-day basis in most regards for a long while, long before Mr. Gaines took that position. So I like that. I think somebody said it to me as an allusion to a certain degree of how much power the mayor held in Cedar Falls and how much they didn't. And moving to the city administrator role was a clarity moment for the city too, in that previously Mr. McAllister was doing those things, those functions. So it made sense to move to that model per se. And I completely agree that elected officials, we have to allow the voting public to determine our elected officials, and the power needs to reside there, whether that's council or mayor. I think there needs to be some authority there in the mayor's role, but the mayor's role really is very limited, and I might be wrong there, Mayor.
No, it's purposeful, and I appreciate why there are limits to it.
There are. I mean, the biggest opportunity in the mayor's role is the opportunity to influence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that this is a power grab or anything. I think we're clarifying on the books what happens every day. So I don't want to, just for my 2 cents on the directors thing, I would much rather see that. I like that there are several council people that sit in on directors' interviews, and that allows us, I don't think that we need to be involved at any level underneath that, but I would like to see directors, the council maintain a role in hiring directors, I guess.
Okay. And I'm seeing a consensus for that. Or it sounds like there's no real objection to keeping the existing process. So for the sake of continued discussion, I'd like to just informally take that off the table and say that we probably won't move forward on that. Like there's just not really a sense. So because there's other things that we want to discuss in this, which theoretically we only have 8 minutes left, but this is going to be much bigger than that. So I'll move past that time for we had planned for the second part. And I would like us to also talk about some of the other things that were listed for the mayor's, the duties and assignments or responsibilities of the mayor. Those are ones that I wrote up myself and had Kevin review, and he had no concerns legally with that language. Some of those, and let's talk about the budget, and this ties directly to what Mark is saying about what the mayor's role has been. So,
what page number are you talking?
Well, this would be under page 7, looks like, and I can show my screen here. I don't know how much value it'll have, but I'm going to show the screen. Okay, so it's a little bigger. And so looking at some of these items, the changes that I'd requested for this powers and duties section was talking about the mayor supervising the city administrator and giving direction as necessary concerning the functions of the departments. This is different from before, where down a little later it said, the mayor shall supervise all departments of the city and give direction to department heads concerning the functions of the departments. So this was a major thing I talked about in my little statement about how both the administrator and I in the code are directly supervising the departments. And so is there an expectation from council that I would be in like every staff meeting, the director staff meeting, or in like giving task direction to the departments? Because that is not happening. I don't believe it happened under Jim Brown's tenure or with Mayor Cruz's tenure. So is that something that you want to restore, to have, like, do you expect the mayor to be doing that? Do you expect the mayor to be personally preparing the budget? Or with the administrator, am I more in an oversight role? And open up to discussion there.
I would think that the mayor would want to listen to the department reports.
Absolutely. I think that's so important that the mayor's involved with every department head. That's where you get all your information. That's why I push so hard to have these subcommittees back. The information that you get at that level is tremendous. That way you're directly listening to what the issues are on every different department head. And that's where we can make a more informed decision. It comes straight from department head. It's not filtered through anybody or channeled or anything else. I would definitely like to see that. I'm actually banned from all the department head meetings, and believe it or not, all of you people are as well. We can't sit in on any of that stuff, and that's what I was directly told. There's an 8:30 meeting on Monday morning. I'm not allowed to go to that, and I don't believe any of you are allowed to either. And I know our mayor should be going to that meeting to see exactly what goes on in our city, because it's so important. We're the elected officials that need to have the power.
So what added?
There's also a,
Go ahead, Mark.
I don't want to get into a match here, but there's a fair reason why that's the case, and that's unfortunate because social media is what it is, and truthful information was not put out on social media about a said meeting. So I can completely understand, as disappointing as it is that I can't attend those meetings, I can understand why staff has made that decision because of actions that have happened in the past. It's unfortunate, but a line has to be drawn somewhere.
And that wasn't the staff that made that decision. I was asked about it and I made the decision. So that's on me. And again, it's because those, or I haven't said before, those staff meetings are deliberative, and they are all draft, they're notional. It's not a report out to staff. It's them trying to troubleshoot and problem solve. And that's not the place where the council members, or in my view, the mayor really has the best role or the most useful role. I certainly see myself as the ombudsman. So if there are problems with how the government is being run, I absolutely should have the authority, and I should have the training and ability to review those incidents and cases to make sure the government is running correctly, but not to be directly involved in the administration of it, because then you're just duplicating what the administrator is doing.
I completely disagree. I think we're voted in so that we can watch and see what happens and know what's going on at a specific level. So I disagree. I think that all council people should want to be involved at all these levels. I want to have the most information that I can on what actually is going on and what's being thought and who's talking about any different thing and what ideas they do have, because I think the department heads may have different ideas than our city administrator. And I like to hear those ideas. And then we can all bring it together as a council and talk about it.
Can I, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly. This is work session, so just chime in.
Yeah. This whole conversation, well, a couple things. It's been my impression that what Kevin has given to us, that you and Kevin, Mayor, have given to us, is really kind of clarifying a lot of what's been happening for years. I don't sense, I mean, I think there's some clarification here, but I don't sense anything that you're suggesting is a huge change in our practice. And I trust Kevin to give us the legal advice on some of these things. I think discussion about what our role as a council in the determination of a staff person or the hiring of a staff person is up for discussion. But I get the impression what Kevin has given us is basically cleaning up and clarifying the practice we've had pretty much across the board for a long time. So I appreciate the clarification there. And then as far as how Dave sees his role versus I see my role, That's another discussion maybe we need to be having, is what is the role of an elected official? I'm not an expert in public works or police public safety. So for me to go to a committee meeting or a staff meeting, department meeting, and give input, I think it's great to go and observe, ask questions, but we hire people, we hire professionals who are trained in their jobs to do their jobs. So for me to go to regularly to staff meetings and participate, I think is really kind of inappropriate. People say we are their boss, and I think we are. We just spent 10 hours in goal setting, and we set goals for the community for the next 5 years, but none of us are experts. We hire people to do that. So I think some of this discussion that we're having now needs to move to not just what is our administrator's role or the mayor's role, but what each of us as individuals, how much do we want to micromanage the professionals that we hire? That's not why I got into this, and I don't think it's appropriate. And I think that what Kevin is doing, and are you trying to do, clarify or to document what basically the practice has been for quite a while and just clean it up. And to me, that's what we've got here. And I admire your attempt to do that. Obviously, it's not going to happen maybe as quickly as you like, but I think it's also important to continue to have these discussions, because I too got a bunch of emails, and it sounds like, out there in the community, the world is ending. It's never going to be the same. And I think it's important as a community to know that a lot of what is here now, that's been our practice for years, and we got a pretty nice town. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I think clarifying, streamlining, and then educating, I think we're headed in the right direction with this process. It's just going to take a while.
As we're clarifying the mayor's roles, like when you talk about specific powers and duties, this is just the mayor. It's not talking about the council. I just, when you take out like that number 1 that's been all redlined out, I'm just wondering if we need to still list some of our expected duties, because I kind of expect the duty of a mayor to know what the departments are doing. So I'd like to see he goes to these meetings.
I have a question for staff. Did Jim Brown and John Cruz go to all of the staff meetings? Has that been a common practice?
It has not.
I was just curious.
That's what I was going to ask.
But still, how do we, I think it's fair that the mayor or council stay informed. So, isn't that what we're after, staying informed, or give input when we have some input to give, but not to be there to be the elephant in the room and try to everybody walking around, oh, got the council members here or the mayor's here, I got to watch what I say. Sorry.
Well, to that point,
I read every department report that comes my way. So you see them in the council packets once a month. I go through them in detail. I highlight parts of it. I make sure that I understand what's going on. I don't need to be in a deliberative meeting to find out that information. So I think that I'm very engaged when it comes to knowing what's going on. I would love to be doing ride-alongs still, but haven't been able to do that because of coronavirus. But I certainly would. I know that that's an important role, is staying informed. I just don't believe that I should be doing the administrator's job of administrating government, because that's what you hired him to do.
I think to jump in here, there is a lot of good in this document with the clarifying things. I'm glad that we're going to take out the. There are a few things where I feel like direct accountability to the people, like I had said, with the approval of the department heads and things like that. I think that there's this illusion that in this town that the mayor has all this power, and I want to make sure that, like you said, that if we move this direction, that we do it where the people still do have the power. They realize that we're not taking away power from the people, and people, the elected officials, are still accountable, but we also create a well-oiled machine. So anyway, I just wanted to throw it out there that while I do disagree with some of this and I want to get some of it out there, I do think there are a lot of good clarifications, and I want to make sure that that we're, I guess, more communicative with the public and make sure that they're aware of what actually truly happens. What does the mayor really do?
I agree with that, Simon.
Okay, I'd like to shoot some things in here.
Sure, please, Daryl, go right ahead.
A lot of little comments on a lot of things that were said here, but I like the idea of cleaning up. If there's little nuances in here that we got to take care of, that's fine. But something to Mr. Sire's point of whether you can attend a meeting or not. If we choose to attend, we should be able to. We shouldn't be banned. We don't have to go in there and change the direction of the meeting and direct staff to do something that hasn't been decided by the entire council. But you should be able to attend these meetings freely to get the nuances of what's happening on whatever topic might be. Regarding the just cause, I have a strong aversion to that. That's a very high hurdle in the legal aspect to reach. And as the years and decades go by, if there's a change in philosophy or personality of the people around, say the city administrator or director of finance or all these positions, there should be the ability to say at some point, if a person's philosophy is not keeping up with economic changes or technology changes or demographic changes in a city, that we can say as a council, that's not, you're not the right fit any longer for the direction of the city the council would like to go. So I'm strongly opposed to changing or adding just cause for a number of these positions. I think we need more wiggle room there. If the various directors and administrators are doing their job and listening to council, there won't be a problem. But if they are trying to force their own personal agenda, and it can be very minor, and by this change to just cause, we don't have the ability to rein that in. So I'm strongly opposed to that. Regarding whether we go forward on this, I don't think this is ready to move forward. I want to have more public review and feedback. Very, very limited exposure on this. And in some cases here, some of the components I'd like to have outside legal review. And I would ask if we can have city council approve that. And the reason I say that, Kevin, great guy, love you, Kevin, but you're underneath Gaines and Jennifer Rodenbeck. They're your boss. They're going to say, hey, we want certain things done. You're going to do it. So I think we need, because we're encompassing the whole pyramid here all the way to the top, I'd like to have a viewpoint from outside our organization, outside our pyramid. So I'd like to see that take place. Those are some of the main points that I can think of right now.
So Daryl, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I agree actually with a lot of what you said. If we possibly could get a viewpoint and understand where the clarities are good for us, other than the just cause and the department head approvals, are the clarities okay with you? Is that what I'm hearing you say? It's just,
well, I looked at 53 pages of legal information here that
a lot.
I am used to reading this stuff a lot, but there's intended consequences and unintended consequences, and consequences is not the right word. Intended results and unintended results, or byproduct of what we change. And I think it's very important to ponder what the meaning of these changes are. This is not to go forward. I can understand Mayor Green's intention to clarify certain things. And in my case, I'm going to watch this video again to get clarity on Mr. Green's, Mayor Green's explanations and other feedback from all of you, and then ponder it. And then I want the public out there that's watching, I want feedback from all of them. I want public feedback. And, you know, it might be slanted opinion. It might, you know, whatever, you know, we got to filter it in some cases, as us and council know. But there's no hurry on this. I see no reason to say we want to move forward with everything here. I'd like to have a cursory outside review from another legal.
What would be the process to make that happen? Can staff touch on that? Have we ever done that before? What would be the process of making that happen?
I'm wondering what legal aspect is you're wondering about here, so we could direct the review if you want outside counsel. I mean, we're hearing, if this is the consensus of council to send it out for outside review, we can sure do that easily. But I'd appreciate some direction of what aspects of this you're concerned with the legality of.
What you're looking for?
Yeah, I don't know what.
I'm thinking we're changing the pyramid in a very broad sense, and whether it's some firm that's familiar with municipal structure, municipal corp, I don't even know the right words, but I can think of firms in Des Moines, Davis Brown firms, got more attorneys than they got rooms in the building probably. And, there's a second opinion.
On what? Is it lawful to do what the city has done to date? Yes. Is it lawful for the city to take another direction in this pyramid? Yes. So there's the policy part you are all in charge of, and the legal part I'm in charge of. And I think what you're talking about is the policy. Council isn't comfortable with this type of pyramid, maybe. Oh, that's a policy decision. Remember, the Iowa Code says that the council establishes its offices and its terms. And so it is ultimately council's decision how the pyramid's set up or not set up, who it appoints directly. Those are all policy decisions.
What about, that makes sense, Kevin. What about, I do agree with Daryl on taking it slow. I think there's some good things in here, and I want to try to make things clearer and better, but I also don't want to rush it, and I don't want to make mistakes. And I want to make sure that accountability is still there and power's with the people. As always, I'll continue to say that. What about Iowa League of Cities or some sort of presentation where we can see how do other cities function with administrators? What do their ordinances look like? How does that work? I know a lot of people say, well, don't compare us to other cities. But there's stuff to be learned. We can see, how do other people structure it? How do they work out, the balance of power, and how does that work? So is that possible? Maybe instead of another law firm, second opinion, we could reach out to the League of Cities or someone who deals in this, and they could help.
I like that point, Simon, because I don't know if you wanted to interject there, but
That's fine.
We hear people come before council and say we want a manager mayor, we want a city administrator mayor, council, different versions. And my understanding is there's multiple nuances of what we can do. And I'd like to have a chance to dissect and critique those and really fit, because it's just part of our diligence, and that's something I do every day, all day. Relating.
I don't think that would be part of this discussion, though, because you were talking about changing the form of government or the value of the different form of governments. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, we're changing the shape of the pyramid. Maybe
it doesn't change the form of government.
We're not changing the charter. In other words, because we still have
council.
Well, I know we're not on this particular document, but
I do want to make sure we're focused on what is on the agenda tonight.
So Daryl, does it, the direction here, can Kevin go and print off 53 pages of an ordinance from Ankeny and we can compare and contrast? Is that what you're after here? Because, other cities they're going to do it similar in some regards and different in some regards, I would imagine, but I'm just trying to get to where are we trying to get?
Well, I don't want to diminish any abilities here or boast about my experiences here, but I read a lot of this type of jargon for many, many years, and there's intended results and unintended results.
Sure.
There's the at-will removal from a position and just cause removal from a position. And like I said a little bit ago, over time, over the years and decades, philosophy change. And if people are in a position for many decades, their philosophies don't necessarily change unless they don't many times. And, you've dealt with elderly people that have a belief system based on their experience in the Depression. Other people will have their life belief built on the roaring 90s into the 2000s before the bubble burst in the economy. And other people will have a philosophy built around the booming real estate market up until 2007. So those things are in the finance market, but they're the world we live in, and housing and everything like that. And as a city, we're directing our staff to move based on what we see the economy doing to provide a good city and all the services of the city. But if an administrator or directors are not flexible and believing in what's happening, they're going to be stuck. And I'm zeroing in on just cause versus at will. And if somebody is not the right fit, it clashes, and we need to adjust staffing in that case. So.
Okay, well, that sounds like something that, since this document is just, it's a notional document, it's not coming forward for approval. As we have the next weeks going forward, and we can give this out to the public, we'll pull out those items. So where it talks about just cause, we'll take it out of the document so it's not under consideration. If council decides later on that you'd want to do a motion, if somebody's really insistent that it should be in there, you can always motion to amend. But unless hear anything from, is there any concern about doing that procedurally, Attorney Rogers?
Oh, I do have follow-up on the just cause situation. That's in the ordinance right now. That's without any changes in the ordinance whatsoever. That standard is already in there. Am I hearing that the council wishes that it were out of the ordinance, the current ordinance?
It's not on the current administrator.
Okay, good. So that position can easily change back if that's what council's thinking. I just want to get the parameters of what council's thinking in this.
I mean, I would like to hear more from the public and have the public more time to just look at this document just as it sits and throw it there for a couple months. We got the pandemic, we got Christmas break here, we got winter coming. If everybody's stuck in their home and not going out to celebrate, they got a lot of time to read 53 pages. Hey, I'm not kidding. I mean,
and I would add to Councilmember Cruz's question, I could pull together some ordinances from other cities that have a mayor, city administrator dichotomy and show you how they address it.
Yeah, I think this is all germane to that
sure.
topic, whether we change the form of government or not. But I mean, we're sort of touching on things here. The pyramid is changing shape. It might be a trapezoid when we're done.
Sure. And that's all within council's discretion.
Sure.
I have two questions, Jack.
Taking our time.
Yeah, Susan, go ahead.
My two questions, I do object to the part-time mayor. And so when you look to the 2186, which is salary on page 7, this appears like it's a change made to try to move to a part-time mayor because it talks about changing the pay. So if we are against going to a part-time mayor, then wouldn't that strike this section 2-186? And my second question was on 2-222 on page 13, which is regarding appointments. My question on that is simply, you said earlier about ordinance versus policy. I think one of the guys mentioned earlier about how we like the team concept for appointments. So do we need to put that in the policy that we would still do like the team interviews like we currently do?
On the department directors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that require a change? Or is it just?
Well, you're changing it here because you say you're saying the administrator shall appoint, where it said before that they shall recommend the appointment.
We're going to pull that out already. Like, that's not part of this anymore.
I think there probably still is a validity in clarifying that process, that mayor pro tem, admin, chair, or how it actually happens now is probably valid. I think that might be what you're getting at, Sue.
Yeah, if it's in the policy, then does that mean it doesn't need to be here in the ordinance, or does it need to be in the ordinance? I'm just trying, I like the way we do it and trying to keep doing it the way we do it.
Okay. What do you think, Kevin, for codifying versus having something in a policy? Codifying makes it harder to change.
Right, and it depends how far council wishes to drill down in the process to codify it. That's a judgment call.
I think it's worth it just to make sure that it's known, like that's a definite process. I'd support that, Susan. To put that.
If we like that process, which I do, I haven't gotten to take place yet with any of it, but I do like that it's there. I feel like it gives the, so
So it doesn't change. It won't change anything, but it'll just put it into the ordinances as a. Here's what we will definitely do. Okay, great.
I made a note of that.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
And then what about my question on the salary? I mean, am I correct that this is changing the salary because they're automatically looking at it as a part-time mayor?
Yeah, this was part of the proposal, but that's the second half of the discussion. Those are easy changes to make if council doesn't wish to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm. So I would say, because like we didn't want to put the cart before the horse on this. If there is an expectation and council is willing to vote on that, to say, yes, Mayor, we do, like your expectation is to be in all the meetings. Your expectation is to directly, which basically means directly supervising the departments, if I understand correctly.
Saying he has to go to every meeting. I'm just saying I would think you'd want to try to go to whatever, as much as you can, to be as informed on things as much as possible.
Oh, can I say something to that effect? I do want to say that from the majority of the conversations and emails, that the citizens of our city, I think, do envision that you are in those meetings. And sometimes I feel like, I don't know that you necessarily, I envision that you're working together. And I think that's what citizens are I don't want to say that it's a duplication because, but the citizens of our city do think, they envision that you're sitting in on these meetings.
Just to be clear on that, I don't work with the administrator. The way I say, I'm his boss. And I evaluate him, I supervise him, I meet with him regularly to discuss city topics and where I have concerns. If I step into being in meetings and basically being part of meetings, by default, I'm going to take over those meetings.
Why would you have
Well,
to
then
take
I
over-
think we need to educate our public. Our public needs a lot of education as to the role of the mayor, because that is not what's communicated when people reach out with concerns. So, I'm not saying wrong one way or the other, but are the citizens of Cedar Falls, we need to educate the public on that.
You can,
Mr. Mayor, to your point there a little bit ago, you said you go to a meeting, sit in on a meeting, you take over the meeting. I remember Mayor Brown attending numerous meetings, and he just listened to get the pulse of what was going on. So I don't see any need for you to feel that you would sit in on a meeting to understand what's happening and get a better vibe than a few paragraphs that somebody gives you as the results and minutes of a meeting. I think you should be there and not take over the meeting. I don't see why you would feel you need to do that.
Back to my subcommittees, I hate to butt in, but that's a perfect spot. I'm not out there to direct what the department heads do, but if we had the three council people that went to those department head meetings, then they could talk about it afterwards and only be there to get the information on what was going on. And as Daryl said, the vibe. And as Kelly also said, I also believe that the mayor was working directly with the city administrator. And that's the way it kind of has been. And if you just go back a couple of mayors, yeah, it's going to be pretty much the same. But if you go back to Mayor McKinley, and he's actually the one that started the industrial park, and Viking Pump was the first one out there on the middle of nowhere on a gravel road. But he did go to all those, and then they did have their subcommittees. So it just depends on how far you go back about subcommittees or how involved the mayor is. And I think we always want to err on the side of the people who voted us in and keep the power in the voters.
What do you do with that information, Dave, when you disagree with something you hear in a department meeting?
Well, the thing about it is when the three of you talk together about it, and then you come to the council at a committee meeting of the whole, then you're a little more able to discuss with the ones who weren't there. And the reason that they only use three, and we should ask Tom Haggerty to come in and teach us about those subcommittees. Stan Smith was going to help me to do that, and yet Stan passed away at an opportune time on my committees. And that's the thing, you get that, and then when those three council people go out and investigate and talk to citizens about whatever it is, then they can come back and talk to the rest of the council, and we're a little more enlightened. That's all. That's all that is. That's not to direct them directly. It's only to get us more information on what's actually going on. That's all.
Hey, I like Dave's explanation there, Mark, because I've done ride-alongs with the snowplow crew and public safety now twice. And I really enjoy it, and I encourage everybody to do that as much as possible, because you can get a report from Director Olson, Police Chief Birdie, and Brian Heath from Public Works. But until you're in the snowplow truck going around and around and up and down the city, and you see the little nuances of the issues of snowplowing the city in a rapid fashion, it's difficult. So am I not allowed to do a ride-along anymore? I mean,
you are totally encouraged to do ride-alongs, and I would invite that for everyone, because that's not
absolutely.
It's not an incredible deliberative discussion. That is seeing the city's operations at work, and everyone should be doing that, in my opinion.
So,
Daryl, I don't disagree. I think those things are necessary, but at the same time, I think we're talking in ideals here. The fact of the matter is, social media exists, and you can put out there whatever you want, factual or not, and
good or bad.
It has a tremendous impact on our community across the state, across the country.
We just lived through a 2-year election cycle. Yes,
it has a huge impact. So I think it's got to be safeguarded to a certain degree. The ride-alongs and anything like that we can participate in there, I think they're valid. But the fact of the matter is not everybody is truthful on social media. And unfortunately, that has happened on our council. And it has changed everything for how each of us get to interact.
I think the public understands and can see truthful.
No, they can't.
Give them more credit. Everybody's not led around like lemons based on social media.
I don't think they are either, but some 300 comments following a non-factual piece of information put on social media by
there's 40 almost 40,000 people in our community, Mark. So
still has an impact, Daryl.
Oh, of course it does.
Councilor Derry, did you have
positive feedback from us going to a ride-along? I'm done.
I got to say something now. If that's okay. I think it's a real fine line. A couple things. It's regrettable that our city attorney and the mayor were trying to simplify and clarify common practices that we've used for quite a while, have it consistent with our ordinances or whatever. And now it's, I guess if I were a staff member in the community, I'd be wondering, do these people not trust me? We hire good people to do the work. We give them marching orders. We ask them to do projects that maybe they don't think are all that great, but they do the job. They're professionals. I worry about going to department meetings for any other reason other than observing. But if I can see how easy it would get to start micromanaging professional staff. We hire professionals. Daryl, maybe, you know, in your business, you're more professional about some things than I am, but I have no firsthand knowledge about how to operate a snowplow. I admire the people that do it. I respect them. And if there are problems, I want to make sure they're dealt with, but I can't determine that by going to every, you know, the ride-alongs are great, but I'm just not, I don't see the value. I see the value in it once in a while going in and showing I'm really interested in what you're doing. But the day-to-day job that you do, I'm not qualified. If our citizens aren't happy, they'll tell me, I'll come to you, we'll fix it. But if I go to a meeting every time and they think, well, geez, now Frank's in there, I better do, you know, what's he want me to do kind of stuff. We don't need to be looking over our staff's shoulders. And I just think that we look at this community. We're the envy of most of Iowa. We've been doing something right.
I agree totally. Yeah.
Kevin's tried to clarify some of this stuff, and the mayor to make it more clear and more consistent with our common practice. But now we're talking about we're gonna be responsible, 3 of us for 5 different departments or whatever, and we're gonna be in City Hall every day. I'll be the first to admit I should be more involved than I am, but I'm not, because I trust our staff and they do great work. And to me, this discussion is kind of indicating we really don't trust the staff.
Well, Frank, I hope not to imply that, because, you know, as I still consider myself a new council member even after 3 years. And I remember when I first became a financial planner, they said we were rookies for 5 years, even though typically you think rookie is 1 year. There's a lot to learn, a lot to know, a lot to see.
Right.
I'd like to sit in on more meetings if I had more time, just to get the vibe of what's going on and understand the back office.
Daryl, I don't disagree. I mean, I think everybody should be welcome to do that, and if you want to do that.
Yeah, and
only for that purpose, to know more what's going on.
Sure.
Not to go in and make the staff feel like, ooh,
the staff shouldn't be feeling that way if the staff is doing what the council voted to do, or them to do. So
Can I jump in real quick? I do appreciate what you guys are talking about, but we are actually talking about something completely different at the moment than we originally started with, which was the document and the ordinances. Not that it's not a valid conversation, but I think whether, you know, that should be another time. Is there a way, Mr. Mayor or staff, obviously there are some issues with what council is comfortable with this document. I do think there's good in the document, and I do think there's stuff that needs to be changed. Is there a way that we could somehow structure a meeting where we could go through it section by section and see kind of like, you know, if we're going to clarify, whether that involves extra work sessions or whatever we have to do, if we're going to do this and go through it and kind of come to a consensus on each section and talk about what we feel comfortable with, so we can actually accomplish clearing some stuff up and moving ahead with some
Simon, that'd be micromanaging there. I mean, just put the document out there for the public to digest it for a couple months and just take any and all feedback. That's the simplest. If the things that are legitimate and worthy to do and needed to do, they'll stay. They'll stand on their own. And
I guess we can do that too. I didn't really feel it was micromanaging to go through it section by section with council and talk about it. I thought it might be efficient, but you know, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that I understand the concerns with this document from some people. And I understand that we don't want to lose accountability and we don't want to have a power shift and all that. But I think we are losing sight of some stuff. There is good in this document with clarity. There is other stuff. I want to see how can we positively move forward and work together as a council to make the best changes for the city with the clarifications and see what we're comfortable with and how we can. So that's my point. How do we do that?
Well, I'd see this meeting is fulfilling its intended purpose of giving staff and me a better sense for what parts of the document are amenable and which parts you would want to see eliminated or kept as original. So certainly an additional work session, unless council objects, I think an additional work session would be in order. That would give maybe in January, have it where we put out this document with Kevin and I can go through this week and make the tweaks that you have requested and set it up so it's what notionally would be hopefully more approvable by council as it is.
So we would,
That work session, you could go through those line items and say, we don't like this, we do like this, and change it from there.
so in other words, putting out, we're gonna amend it, what you got the consensus on, put out another document to council and to the public, and then I'd be for, I would support that because it's taken the draft. Yeah, another draft, a second draft.
And that's what this is for. It'd be really tough to just put this out and then let it sit in the public eye first when we haven't even had the council initial discussion on it. So now that's where we're at for the next step, is getting it into the hands of the public to provide additional feedback based on tonight's work session, allow the public to view tonight's work session and the dialogue and to start mulling over it themselves as well, their own thoughts. And then after that work session, we'll know more where we want to go. And I think especially for the expectations from council on the mayor's role and how much time you're sort of expecting based on the mayor's job, what you see it as, that helps to define whether it makes sense to be part-time or full-time.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, can we then set this up in February since the holidays, we're right at the Christmas, New Year's point, and some travel time for people and that sort of thing? Can we jump into February with it? Be first meeting in February, maybe?
Well, I'm fine with it, but just to keep in mind that as we go into election season, what I heard from council at the work session, the goal setting session, was you wanted to have these addressed in time for people to make their decisions on whether they wanted to run for office. So I don't want to get us to the point where we're looking at a final decision in May or June, but I don't think that pushing it to February causes that. It just might mean we won't know for sure until March, April.
Could it be more like a homework assignment where council members send to Kevin or you areas that they want answered or questions they have, and then at the next meeting clarify them instead of a meeting like this where we all just kind of throw things at the wall and see what happens? I mean, could it be the next time we talk about it, all of those questions are at least answered, maybe not to people's satisfaction, but have been answered, so it's a little bit more to the point? Is that something you're thinking about?
I feel like this is such an important thing that I understand us, in goal session or goal setting that, having this in place for the upcoming election, but I don't want to feel rushed through the process because I feel like it is very important just so we can accomplish that. I feel like it's too important to rush through it. And I agree with Daryl in the fact that I want to hear from citizens. I want to hear the citizens' comments to me about what they think of what's proposed.
And I won't be available in January, so I like the February date as well.
And I'm glad to hear from any council members anytime on any of this stuff.
Well, I would like to ask too that number 7 on page 8, which was under duties, if we consider somehow trying to rewrite that back in, and that under one of the mayor's goals was to have a written documentation to us or a written report, and that's what number 7 kind of outlined a little bit.
Let me catch up with you. What page was it again? I'm sorry.
8.
Page 8? Okay.
Yeah, and it was struck, so eliminated. It said the mayor shall make oral or written reports. Well, we're fine with the written. I think in goal setting, we talked about a written report. In one place in goal setting, it says monthly. Another place it said bi-weekly. And I think number 7 kind of addressed that, but now it's been strucken out or striked out.
You're saying number 7.
Yeah, number 7.
I had shifted that over to the administrator about the reports just because of, I thought that was the monthly departmental reports, like making reports. But could you provide some clarity as a council for what you're looking for from that?
Well, it's in our goal setting even. It's for tonight's agenda. It's even marked on there in 2 places. It was kind of an update from the mayor on what he's been doing, what's up with, just a short memo, so that we were more informed.
Okay, and then to
In
include
the
that in
goal
the
setting,
council
it's
package.
listed as bi-weekly. I don't care if it's monthly or bi-weekly, but I think it's something that shouldn't be done away with.
Okay. So like a memo, it'd be different from the council or the departmental monthly reports, and I'll just include it as a memo in with the documents. I'll list, I'll change or Kevin and I can work to change the wording and re-add 7 to account for that. But that won't take the place of the monthly departmental reports, correct?
No.
So those will still come from the administrator, and I'll do my separate part. Okay.
We still have a couple minutes. What about throwing out the question of, do we care about taking the word full-time out and the salary? Susan had mentioned that, and I know we probably can't do that in 5 minutes, but that's going to be another big chunk of our talk, I'm assuming. So, what are the pros and cons of possibly taking that word out?
Yeah, I have no problem with taking it out for now, because we can't even look at that. That's not even a consideration if you're talking about increasing the amount of hours you're expecting from the mayor in certain types of functions. So I'll just drop that from this document, and we can discuss it at a later time. I mean, I certainly still want to discuss it, but I don't want it to, again, put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, because when you go to discuss it, if you're going to drop you to 20 hours, you certainly shouldn't get insurance benefits, or whoever the mayor might be.
Mm-hmm. So that was supposed to be part 2 on here, and we didn't get to that, but we'll get to that in our hopefully our next work session or the one after that. But yeah, I agree. Let's take the time that we need to make this the document we want. All right, well, thanks. With that, we do need to switch over to committee of the whole at 6:25. So I'll go ahead and close this meeting. And we will just move forward for an additional work session sometime in February on one of the council Mondays. Thank you. A terrific discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah. Meant it to be, it was going to be kind of contentious, and everyone did so civilly, and I'm grateful for that, and had a lot of great thoughts. This is a tough topic. All right, so we'll see you in about 5 minutes. Denny, are you on? Can you give us a time tick? Okay, so that'd be 6:27. I've got 6:22 right now.